Do what you're doing because nobody can do it the way you do it.
That was Carmell Pelly, my guest this week on Recover Yourself. Hi, I'm your host, MartinJon, and this week we're talking to Carmell Pelly, who produces a wonderful show for and about women in recovery, and she is super passionate about changing the stigmas and ideas of what people have about recovery, just as I am. So I'm super excited to have a conversation with her. So here we are. So, Carmell, thank you for joining me. You have considerable amount of time. Talk to me about how much time you have.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm clean and sober from drugs and alcohol for 14 and a half years.
How much do you think about your sobriety now? I know like you work within sobriety because you work within like your podcast and other things that you do are revolved around that. But how much do you think about your personal sobriety today?
Yeah, well, I think that when it comes to, say, am I concerned on a daily basis whether I'm going to pick up and use or have a drink? That's just not anything that's in my vicinity of my awareness. And that's evolved over time. I think for myself, it's more about balance these days, balancing life. I can say that at this point, and to back up a little bit, I had to really put the work in the beginning, and it did take a while. So to be where I am today, I'm aware of it, but it's not an issue.
Right. At what point did you realize, or did you wake up to your self-realization that like, oh, this is just my life now? Versus like, this is my life. Like I have to be sober. Like, and my life is in this space of not doing.
I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is probably my stepfather. He likes to joke with me. He's a jokester. And I know that he's proud of my sobriety, as is my family, but he likes to offer me a drink all the time to be funny. And definitely in the beginning, I found that really difficult because it brought up those feelings like I was missing out on something. And it brought anxiety. And so I would have to say that it was probably the first time that, it was funny and he did his little joke, what can I get you to drink, And I just laughed. And I had no emotion attached to it. It just didn't bother me. So I think that's probably a defining moment for me.
And so you noticed that when that happened.
Oh, for sure. Because I used to walk away just frustrated and wondering, like, aren't you supposed to be supportive? And why would you offer me a drink? And, so there was definitely a significant difference.
So how long did you have at that point? Do you recall?
I would like to say that it was probably around 4 or 5 years sober.
Yeah.
It did take a while because it does. It takes a while to retrain your brain and so that you don't feel like you're missing out on things. And
one of the wonderful things that this sort of story like has is that you didn't know until it was there.
Yeah.
Like you're walking and you're thinking, oh, I have to be sober, and then all of a sudden, like you haven't registered that you've changed yet. Right?
It also brings up another memory of kind of back then of, I got used to leaving events and functions early. And, that used to bother me too. And then it got to a point where it really didn't bother me. I was just grateful that I was going to wake up in the morning and feel fantastic.
Right, yeah. Waking up without having to pay your dues for last night is a big part of sobriety, and it's a wonderful thing. But do you still leave events early just because you know you're going to wake up in the morning, or?
No, at first I didn't go into places or situations that would get me into trouble. Later on, when I started putting myself back in those situations, there was that feeling of, oh, I better leave. Like I'm getting a little antsy around this. And then as I got to know myself better, I got to know who I was, understand my own personal worth. I think that was a huge, huge part of it, was understanding my worth, understanding that I had choices. I started to find out that there were other things in life that I really enjoyed doing, that I loved, and that I looked forward to. And so for me, sitting in an event or a nightclub or that sort of thing just didn't appeal to me anymore. I found it absolutely boring and couldn't relate to the people around me. And, I looked forward to getting home and reading this amazing book. I'm an avid reader. I love to read. You could lose me for months, with a book in the bush somewhere, you know, and I think that was something, a part of myself that I've always, since I was a child, loved to read.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way, I felt that there was something wrong with that because I am a natural introvert. As much as I love to be out and I can be the life of the party and I can be chatty, I'm a natural introvert. And my happy place is being by myself. And somewhere along the way, I bought into the idea that there was something wrong with that. And that's when I feel that I started to stuff the drugs and alcohol, because then it made me be able to stay out and do these activities that I realize now that I don't even enjoy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, what sort of so that's a because you're still, I mean, it on the surface from what I see, like that's a lot of your life is still in the role of, I mean, I don't want to say they're extroverted, like, but you call yourself a perfectionist, and your work does revolve around connecting with other people. Not that that has to be in an extroverted way, but do those still cause, is that still a struggle for you?
Um, I've learned to balance it. It becomes a struggle when I don't balance it. So, say if I'm recording, um, 2 or 3 podcasts in a day, or I'm speaking at an event, then I find it very, very difficult, if I don't get that time for myself to just relax. And I have to say, I mean, I've been very fortunate that I married the most amazing man. And just this past weekend, I was at a 3-day conference that was very intense. And it required me to, be with a lot of people. And he's so smart. He's so amazing. He gifted me a night away in a hotel with a spa to just go and be for an entire day and process and come back to my center, because this is how smart he is. He knows that I'm not going to be a very good wife and mom if I don't get that space to myself. And that's just something
Wow.
that I've learned about myself in recovery. So
So to have that sort of a partner that is like really supportive of you, kind of really helps, especially when they can preemptively fix a problem that hasn't like yet occurred, right?
yeah.
Like that's awesome. What sort of struggles do you have today that, although there's still struggles, they don't cause you to struggle? Places where you transfer your addiction and you're aware of it and you're just trying to like
Oh
just
yeah.
work your way through it.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's an ongoing process, right? Most days
Hmm.
are better, but definitely I have to be very careful about the perfection thing, and that is attached to my worth. I have, for some reason, I have this drive inside of me. So that can become a problem, right? Because I can be consumed. So I guess it's a bit of a addiction towards a passion. And
Right.
then having perfectionist issues with inside that, sometimes it is hard to stop once I've started. And when
Hmm.
you have a family life, you have to stop. You can't just sit up for 72 hours and work on a project,
Well, thank God.
because
Yeah.
but I love doing that.
Well, maybe
So,
you think you love doing that, right? Like, and that's and that's what this question is about. It's about, like, I mean, we've talked about perfection. I was just like, okay, I want to, like, this whole thing is not about like you're done, right?
yeah.
Long-term recovery isn't about being finished. It's not about
Mhm.
being done. It's about like doing that work to continue to be a better person and to be
Oh, for
continue
sure.
to be a better you. And so when you recognize your issues with perfectionism, what does that look like in terms of trying to build balance?
I'm laughing because it's it definitely can be a struggle at times. Uh, the danger with perfectionism is that you can sometimes lean, and I can sometimes start to compare my work to other people's work. And unfortunately, so something actually a friend of mine recently had said to me. She's like, Carmel, just stay in your own lane. Right? Focus in your own lane. Do what you're doing, because nobody can do it the way you do it. And so that builds my worth, because a lot of times that perfectionism worth goes hand in hand with it, right?
Oh yeah.
That you're always trying to make it better because you don't think it's good enough, right? But what's the root of that? Well, what is it within me that I'm not feeling all of a sudden I'm not good enough? Why is that? Is it because, and as of recent, with the line of work I'm in, it's a lot of it is new. So I'm learning. There's a learning curve to it. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I want to know how to do it all right now. I want to be just great at it right now. I don't want to do the learning curve. What I do to help that is I take a step back and breathe once I'm aware of it. And I use my tools. I use my tools that I was taught and are ingrained in me from the 12-step program. Mm-hmm. Even though I don't work on my 12-step program like I used to, it's just there, right? The thought process is there and I'm aware. Okay, I'm aware of it. Hand it over to a power greater than myself. Take a look at it. And that definitely brings in the compassion. Like just practicing that, I'm learning to have more compassion with myself. And I think that's key.
Yeah, like that learning how we can love ourselves, especially after all the things that we're carrying, right? We're carrying quite a bit. And it's about forgiveness, and it's about finding our value, right? And like that's what we're dealing with. And we're dealing with this idea of like, I have enough value to live my life. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Recover Yourself kind of wants to touch on, because when we don't have value, we live in fear. What were some of the things that when you began your journey in recovery, what were some of the things that you didn't think were ever going to change? Or what did you think was you? How did you define yourself outside of being an addict, or outside of, like using or whatever, the lifestyle that you were living, like that had changed and really changed the trajectory of your life?
Oh man. I mean, in the beginning, I just thought I was going to be bored. I'm like, I was a party girl. I don't know. It's hard to remember way back then already. Mm-hmm. I definitely had a lot of false worth about myself. And so I carried myself in a different way. I don't know if I was the nicest person. I think inside I always had the best intentions, but my vocabulary and the way I expressed myself was just terrible. Yeah. Like it was, I was probably pretty snotty, I think. I valued myself because I was super thin, and things like that, like really.
And were those things that you defined yourself as, that you were like, this is who I am and I don't want to change this? Now again,
that's a hard question.
Yeah, no, I understand. And I'm asking because it's like, when we're early in our sobriety, right? We have these ideas of ourselves that we're like, okay, I have these faults and I have these things that are bad about me, and that's never going to change, right? Like I'm not, and that goes along with our values, and that goes along with how we see ourselves. And so much of that, what ends up happening is they end up changing, just like with you and your, I believe it was your stepfather, I'm not sure, who was like offering you a drink, right? Like you probably thought you'd always be upset at that.
Yeah, I guess forgiveness is a huge thing, and learning how to forgive and letting go. That's another huge thing. And I think in the beginning, I had no clue who I was. I know I wanted to be somebody, and it depended on who I was standing in front of as to who I was. And now I carried a lot of shame when it came to my family. So in front of my family, I was just, excuse my language, but an effed up mess and going nowhere and mentally unstable. And, and so that was a label that I carried on myself when I was involved with my family. And I still have to be careful of that. Yes, it's been, so it's actually been 17 years since I entered recovery. I relapsed a few times before I got to now 14 and a half years. And so I had that label, but then in front of some people, I was cool, right? I was the cool person. Everybody wants to be around me. You know, I do the cool things. I had an amazing ability to manifest things in my life, like, you know, crazy situations and trips and people, and do things that like most would just dream of doing. And, but unfortunately it was a complete train wreck all along the way. It was like, I looked like I was having fun, but I was not having fun.
Was that life for you at that point? Was that how you defined life? Life was just something you had to do for other people?
I think for me, life was, yeah, for sure, something that I was just always trying to prove my worth, or to just like, I had no clue. And I validated myself by how I looked and how much money I had. And I had to have the nicest house, the nicest clothes, the Louis Vuitton purse, the BMW, that sort of thing. And those are the things that define me. And I, for a very long time, was stuck on that. I felt like I was not worthy unless I had those things. And I think that's what recovery and being sober, you know, that part of knowing my worth,
Yeah,
was letting go of that as well.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. Like, we're going pretty deep here, and I think there's a lot in there, you know? Like,
Yeah, no, that's the point. Sorry.
yeah.
That's what we're here for. That's what
Yeah.
that's what I do. I dive deep.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's so cool because it's kind of a gift in a way, because now I can see it. I spot it a mile away, right? And I see girls, 20-year-old girls that were in my situation, working in the nightclubs and, you know, trying to get as much plastic surgery as they can and carry the best purses and clothing and drive the nicest cars and live in these houses. That unfortunately, what we don't realize, and what I quickly realized, is that it's not sustainable in any way. I mean, it's not, when it comes down to like financially, young 20-year-olds are not going to look like young 20-year-olds for the rest of their lives. So whether you are working in a nightclub as a bartender, whatever you're doing, you have a sugar daddy, whatever it is, right? It's not sustainable. So there's a problem. The other thing is that I feel it's addictive. Once you start with things like plastic surgery and altering your looks, it never stops. You'll never be good enough. It's just like a vacant, empty hole that you're just filling and filling and filling. And it's so funny because now, I mean, you know, 14, 15 years later, I'm in this place where I have so much freedom and so much peace. And that's what's important. Like, there was no freedom back then. There was no peace of mind back then. It's very rare that I feel the way I used to feel. And I think that's where the power is, right? That's why we need to start talking about these things, which is why I'm grateful that you're having me here today. Because when we talk about these things, it kind of unveils the situation a bit, you know?
Mm-hmm.
There's too many young girls caught up in that world right now. And, you know, whether it's prescription drugs or too much alcohol or whatever it is, you know, you're going to have
Too
to
much
fill
social
that void.
media.
Exactly. I know. I get caught up in that sometimes. Like, it's the perfect, like, I just have to grab my phone and blank out for a while, right? If I want to dissociate.
Right. This is checking out. This is addictive qualities, and and it is no secret that marketers know how to get us addicted
Mm-hmm.
to giving us like little bits of dopamine while
Yeah.
we are interacting with their products. And those products are a lot of the products on the market today are touting giving us a better life. And what they're actually doing is getting us to check out of our life. And that's why like this sort of conversation is like, no, it's not easy to recover yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
Oh man, and it starts young now. I have a 3-year-old little boy who, just in the past couple weeks, I don't know if it's the brain development or where he's at, all of a sudden, he's like, I want to be on your computer, right? He's like, I want to play, because he wants to go on YouTube. And they have, like, there's this program on there with over 20 million people viewing this and hits that literally has a little boy his age playing with brand new toys, taking them out of the boxes. And he's like, I want that. I want that. And I'm like, holy smokes, right? New perspective.
Yeah. The world is so, I don't want to say greedy, but yeah, that's a good word for it. You know, that our safety and our ability to we don't, you know, meditation, there's a lot of talk about meditation. Do you have a meditation practice?
I do. Yes.
All right.
I have a very strong meditation practice, meditation and prayer.
Wonderful. Like I know you said like once a week you go on a walking.
Well, so I practice daily. That is one of the very first things I do when I wake up.
Beautiful.
And then 2 days a week I attend. It's like a walking prayer and meditation type situation where it's done in a spiritual space. And so the energy is quite intense. And my higher power is God. God is my number one. I don't do anything without my day. The first thing I do when I open my eyes is invite the Holy Spirit in and invite
Beautiful.
God to be a part of my day, to be covered by my children, my husband. And that is the most important thing. I've learned over time that without that connection, there is nothing for me in life. And it's only become something that's stronger. And I feel like, as we were just speaking about, you know, the addiction to society and electronics and social media and whatnot. And don't get me wrong, I get caught up in it all the time, right?
Yeah,
I have to
me
take
too.
a step back a lot.
The awareness that you're getting caught up in it is the blessing.
Yeah, exactly. And the more time I spend in that space, in prayer and meditation, the more peace I have, the better decisions I can make, the better my day is.
Yeah.
It's not self-led no more. It's spirit-led. And I think that's really what they're teaching in the 12-step program. I think that the 12-step program, it kind of makes me laugh because it's a real introduction to spirituality. It's like I'm hopeless and I'm dying and I might go to jail and all these things. And they're like, well, here's the big book, and this is what you need to do. You need to surrender and submit to a power greater than yourself, right? And it's like, oh, right, this many years later, it's like you kind of get, it kind of comes full circle and you're like, oh. So
Right.
all along, this is what was really going on.
Well, right. And you know, again, the 12 steps like predate the 12-step recovery program, but it is a spiritual journey. And that's why it's really important for us who have long, you know, a lot of time to show that our life isn't revolving around recovery. Recovery is just something that happens to be what we're doing, right? Like,
Yeah.
it just happens to be. It's not sobriety. We're not drinking. We are moving forward towards a life that we want, which is what we thought we were doing, but we were actually running from.
Yes, I 100% agree with you there. I mean, it is pretty funny that most of us end up in these types of programs by accident, and we don't really want to be there. And we think, I know for sure for myself that when I started going, I was like, hey, I'm just going to get this so I can get out, right?
Yeah.
Little did I realize what was actually happening, and that I was rewiring my brain. I was learning to love myself. I was learning how to live, right? I was learning to get life skills.
Right.
You know, I don't think I had any life skills at that point in my life. I mean, I had a child, you know, I have a 20-year-old son today, and I had a child, and I think back and I'm like, well, it's a miracle he's alive, because holy smokes, the lack of life skills that I had, I loved him dearly and I did my best, but, you know.
Yeah. I mean, he's 20, 17 years ago you started a process, 14 years ago you solidified it. Like, I can do the math on that. Yeah.
For sure. He's grown up in the program with
right.
me.
Yeah.
Which I have to say is he's turned into one of the most honest, amazing, you know, young men. He's just incredible. And so I thank the 12-step program for that, right? Like,
and your program.
And my program. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Because 12 steps the 12 steps helped you. You helped him.
Hmm.
You know, like, and that's the thing and again, that's not raising a child in fear, right? Like, that is raising a
Yeah.
child, and you know, like, the fear is where a lot of this started when you were slipping up and but he watched you change
Yeah.
willingly, and he learned from that, and that's where, like, he's 20 now. Over the last 14 years, which is a considerable amount of time for you know, it's almost three-quarters of a child of his life. Like,
Mhm.
he watched you solidify your recovery and give into what was in front of you, and let go and grow
Mhm.
and be you. There's
Yeah.
no prescription, there's no definition of who you are. You are Carmel, right? And that made it easy for him to be, what's his name?
Austin is my
Austin.
name.
And
Yeah.
that's what made it possible for him to be Austin,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So,
And he walks in freedom, right? He's learned a different way to live. So,
right. And he's not, and so he is already, like, he's learning, like, the little things about recovering himself, because of course, as children, we have to give up a little bit to make others happy.
mhm.
But you and I, through our addictions, we're trying to make too many people happy except ourselves. That's
Yes.
where we had value issues. Now, who's got our value? We do. Or we're working towards that, right? We're
Yeah.
working
Yeah.
towards building that value. How do you define addiction?
Oh my gosh. I define addiction as, whether it's a behavior, a substance, whatever it is that makes your life unmanageable. Simple,
Hmm. Okay.
and you
Yeah,
can't
that's a
stop.
that's a that's along the 12-step lines. We like that.
Yeah.
Um, has that definition changed over the years for you?
Of addiction?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, going back to the 12-step program, I was in a hopeless state, unmanageable state.
Yeah.
And as a result of working the steps and living my life, I I live a life of freedom and peace. And yeah, I feel very lucky. I have a lot of gratitude
Wonderful.
for that. Yeah.
And I just want to kind of wrap all that up with, and I know we've already talked, like, about, like, the perfectionism and stuff, and what have you. How how do you see that changing over the next couple years as you continue down this path of to discover and build your life and yourself?
Oh man, I feel like I'm ever evolving. I
Mm.
mean, you know, things just get better and better. And every time I think I have something mastered or I have uh, overcome something, another piece pops up and it's like, oh, hey, might be a little of this to work on. And so I feel like with the perfectionist part of it, I'm definitely deep into the recovery part of it.
Hmm.
And, it's something that it's not something that's unmanageable.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and you're talking about it very openly, and so,
Oh, yeah.
like, I know you're working on that, and I just wanted to bring it up. Are there other things that you're getting an inkling in your life that it's like, oh, maybe this is as well, like social media or something else, like that, things that you're starting to be like, you know what, maybe I'm doing this too much.
Oh, for sure. I mean, not exercising. That's not exercising. I would say that's like number one on my brain right now. That
Okay.
I need to get that going. And you know, I think that it feels good sometimes to sit in the shit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
comfortable. It's comfortable, and
Hmm.
I know that it's not doing me any good. And so that's, I think, the next battle for me on this journey is to. I'm very healthy. I'm very aware of what I put in my body. I'm definitely pretty much 80% plant based. Uh, Absolutely love health and that, but for some reason I'm just not moving, and I'm going to blame it on this winter we've had here in Canada.
You need somebody to play with it.
So at this point I'm going to say that's why, but it is
Okay.
easier to just not feel good sometimes.
Well,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. It's easy to not feel good. It's easy to blame. It's easy to put all that stuff out, but ultimately it's on you.
Yeah.
And it's nice that, because that's like, when it starts to be a thought, it's aligning you, right? Because you have a spiritual body and you have an emotional body and you have like that physical body, and all of those need they want to line up, which means that the things you put in your body are going to be healthy, the things you put in your mind are going to be healthy, and then what you do is going to be healthy. And you can't just do all three, but you do two, and the third will catch up. And that's where like the exercise is coming in now, where the exercise is like now I'm gonna become a little just until you do it, and then once you start doing it, it'll be, like you'll have to prove that you're there. And then it'll just be like, oh my God, I love waking up and exercising every day.
Yeah.
Like,
I find it funny because that was definitely, exercise was a big part of my recovery. Like, I was a figure skater as a child, and gymnastics, and a ballet dancer, and I competed as a figure skater till I was 16 years old. And so I was always very athletic, and it was something I always carried on. And then when I started writing books and had my last baby, that's when the exercise thing just kind of, it was like, I want to write. I'd rather be writing than exercising. Mm-hmm. And I kind of lost the balance of it. And it got to the point where it was like, wow, I need to move my body. It doesn't matter how many more vitamins I stick in. If I don't move my body, I'm not going to feel any better. But it was like, it's that time too, I wanted to spend my time writing and connecting, and so that's what I did. And now I got to figure out how to balance that part.
Right, and
start moving.
as that thought comes, you're aware enough to recognize it, not be afraid of it, because a lot of times people will have a thought and like, push it out. But because we're, the lucky ones, right? Like from recovery or whatnot, like we can recognize that thought and be like, oh, I need a change. And it's not a judgment. It is just...
It's just annoying. Now
right.
Damn it, can like somebody just do it for me?
Right. It's like starting physically is not going to be an easy part, but it's essential. Yes.
Especially living somewhere where it's minus 20, minus 30, and there's so many feet of snow the majority of the year. It's not like I can just go walk around the block, right? Like I have to put the effort in. So yeah.
Well, it's a sunny day today, so I hope you get a nice little walk in.
Yeah, that's the goal. Maybe next time we connect, I'll be on the exercise train. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Carmell, thank you so much for joining me for this. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing so much with us.
Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun, and I enjoy. There's power in sharing our stories. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to the Recover Yourself podcast. Once again, I'm your host, MartinJon, and if you're interested in finding out more about Carmell, you can find links to all the things she's working on in the description of this program. Until next week, keep recovering yourself.